the MCAT Cars podcast, session number 22. The Cars section of the MCAT gives thousands of pre-meds nightmares every night. Whether you're an ESL student, lack confidence while reading, or a slow reader like me, Jack Weston and the medical school headquarters are here to help you score higher in every section so you can be confident you're ready to get the MCAT score of your dreams. Welcome to the MCAT Cars podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, and I am excited to be joined by Jack Weston from jackweston.com. We have a great article today talking about bananas. If you want some more help with your MCAT Cars practice, go check out Jack Weston and their Cars Strategy course. They have 3 sessions all of the time. Go check it out, jackweston.com. Go to the services menu and click on Cars Strategy Service and see when that next free session is. If you're ready to sign up, go to medicalschoolhq.net/jackweston, and that will activate a $100 off coupon to use for your course. Remember, it is a significant investment, but you can also break that down into weekly installment payments to help it be a little bit more affordable for you. Again, medicalschoolhq.net/jackweston. Let's go ahead and jump in and talk about bananas. Jack Weston back for some more MCAT Cars podcast. I'm excited to continue on in our journey of me trying to read and you telling me what I'm doing wrong. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? How's it going?
I'm good. Let's talk real quick about upcoming MCAT Cars Jack Weston courses. As we're recording this, it is the beginning of March of 2018, and it's going to go out pretty soon after. What should students be aware of course-wise for Jack Weston?
So our next course is going to be scheduled for March 21st, which is on Thursday. That's when it starts. That's when the access period can start. We have a new course pretty much every month and a half to a month and a half usually. I mean, it depends on how many students are currently in the course, but that's scheduled for the next course, and we're excited to help students with the early summer, midsummer exams. So yeah, I mean, it's a great time to start studying for the MCAT. You know, getting a head start to study is really important. Now, usually the students who start studying in March are planning to apply to medical schools this coming year.
Yeah.
So they really want to make sure they do well and they have enough time to study. And it's hard when you have school and work. So
Yep.
Yeah.
And essays to write and extracurriculars to write and continue shadowing and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a work. It's literally a job, you know, to apply the right way. So absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into our article today. As always, you can follow along with us in the podcast app that you're listening to this. Tap on the artwork or swipe on the artwork or whatever you need to do for your app, and you'll find a link to this article from Wired, a UK Wired article. So let's begin. Paragraph 1. During the summer of 1989, Randy Plotz was in his laboratory just south of Miami when he received a package from Taiwan. Plotz, who had earned his doctorate in plant...
Okay, so
sorry. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So after reading this first one, we're given some time, we're given a name, we're given a location. And so we have this person who's in a laboratory, so maybe they're a scientist, maybe they're something, and a package from Taiwan. So
right.
trying to figure out what he may have gotten.
Right. The first sentence is very important. It's establishing what we're talking about. It's setting up the scene. And the scene is very descriptive, right? You see, it says summer of 89, right? So you can probably imagine what's going on then. In a laboratory south of Miami, right? I'm thinking of Miami now, Miami Beach, when he received a package from Taiwan. So you can imagine someone sending some kind of package from Taiwan to Miami, right? Doing this allows you to understand the context better when you keep reading, right? But if you overlook this sentence, it may make the other sentences more difficult to read. So a lot of students come to me and ask, hey, how can I improve my speed? How can I get faster and better at timing? Well, it comes down to understanding the context. Because sure, you can read this passage very, very quickly. I'm sure anyone can. But how much of it can you actually pick up, right? And that's where reading it for the context, understanding what's going on can help, because not only will you understand what you're reading, but you'll finish the passage faster because you understand the context that's going to come up in the next sentence and the sentence after it, right? So it's all an investment. Invest your time early on. Try to understand the details now so that when they start talking about things that are a little harder to understand, you already have established the context. You already established what's going on and what's being discussed.
Okay. All right, continuing on, Plotz, who had earned his doctorate in plant pathology 5 years earlier, was collecting banana diseases and regularly received mysterious packages containing pathogens pulled out from the soil from far-flung plantations. All right, so it gives us a little bit more context. Again, as you were talking about, context is important. A little bit of context about who Randy Plotz is. He's a doctorate in plant pathology, and he gets packages of pathogens for banana diseases.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, right? You have someone who specializes or seems to be focusing on diseases of bananas, right? So, I mean, that's kind of unique, but easy to understand. Okay.
But gazing down his microscope, Plotz realized his Taiwanese pathogen was unlike any banana disease he'd encountered before. So he sent the sample for genetic testing. All right, so there was something different about this one.
Okay, sounds good. So some kind of issues. Kind of sounds like, I don't know, have you ever seen one of those zombie movies?
Oh, yeah. I'm a big zombie fan.
Yeah, what's that movie? World War Z?
World War Z or Contagion. Yeah. That was a good one too.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
It was Tropical Race 4, TR4, a strain of the fungus Fusarium oxysporum cubanis that lives in the soil, is impervious to pesticides, and kills banana plants by choking them of water and nutrients. So that's kind of sad. Poor bananas. So they give us the name of what this new thing was that he hadn't seen before and what it does.
Right. Sounds good.
It was a pathogen that would go on to consume the next 3 decades of his professional life. All right, so they introduce us to this researcher. They introduce us to this new pathogen, and then they basically say this is really important because this is what he did for 3 decades.
Right. Now, the reason why I picked out this passage is because this could happen on your exam. I've had students who are about to take the test on the 15th ask me, hey, what if I get passages like this? I've seen this in one of the exams, the AMC practice exams. What do I do? This is more descriptive. You just have to understand the scene, their setup, whatever it is. And that's not too difficult, but it's different than other passages that are convoluted, have a lot of different arguments and ideas. So you just have to go with the flow here. And that's a great summary. So anything you can understand, just pick it up and use and try to understand the next paragraph based off of it. So structure is very, very important here. Make sure you keep track of what we're discussing and why we're discussing it. Okay.
TR4 only affects a particular type of banana called the Cavendish. All right, so it gives us a little bit more context about this pathogen and how it only affects one type of banana, which I guess is good because I like bananas.
Yeah.
All right. There are more than 1,000 banana varieties in the world, but the Cavendish, named after a British nobleman who grew the exotic fruit in his greenhouses on the edge of the Peak District, makes up almost the entire export market. Interesting. Okay, so bananas, lots of different bananas, but this one specifically makes up most of the export market. So I'm guessing that's the kind of banana that we eat is a Cavendish banana. And then it tells us who it's named after, which I doubt is important, but we'll keep that in the back of our head. All right. The Brazilian apple banana, for example, is a small and tart with firm flesh, while the stubby pisang awak, a staple in Malaysia, is much sweeter than the Cavendish. So giving some different banana varieties here. But no banana has become as ubiquitous as the Cavendish, which accounts for 47% of all global production of the fruit. Again, just giving us a little bit more information about how important this particular banana is. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, this amounts to 50 million tons of Cavendish bananas every year, 99% of all global banana exports. All right. So this one is just setting up, I think, potentially how important this one pathogen is, this fungus that affects the Cavendish, which is the banana I think that most of us recognize and eat.
Right. So again, an easy paragraph to understand, but understanding the flow of the passage is very important. So we discussed some kind of pathogen, some kind of problem in the first paragraph. In the second paragraph, now we're discussing the actual fruit or the banana that is being succumbed to this issue, right? And in this case, it's one particular strain of a banana. Okay.
All right, paragraph 3. The UK, which imports 5 billion bananas every year, has become used to this seemingly endless supply of cheap and nutritious fruits shipped from plantations thousands of kilometers away across the Atlantic. So this is just for reference, a UK article. And so they're talking about the UK here and how they are shipping in a ton of bananas, 5 billion bananas, and how they've gotten used to how readily available they are, how cheap they are, and how nutritious they are.
Right.
But the high volume, low margin banana industry has been balancing on a knife edge for decades. All right, so potentially getting into the banana industry now, saying it's a high volume, low margin. So I think for pre-meds who might not know, I think they would understand high volume, but low margin, I think might be hard for students to try to understand. I know that it means that just they don't make a lot of money per banana, but they have to sell a ton of them to make a good amount of money. And so,
right. Now, that's a great point. And also the fact that it's balancing on a knife edge, right, for decades. What does that mean?
It's a nice little idiom, I think, to say that it's hanging on by a hair, for another idiom, to say basically that the industry itself is potentially not sustainable the way it is.
Right. Now, that is definitely not easy to understand. And what gives off the idea that maybe we're going into a problem is that but, that contrast word. When I see that contrast word, it probably tells me we're shifting the direction of our discussion. So in the first sentence, we were discussing how, hey, it's cheap, it's nutritious, right? It's, they're sending them from so many, from such a long distance, right? But now we're talking about potential issues. And if they really care about the issues or the problems that these bananas could face, they'll keep talking about it in the next sentence and the sentence after. That's typically how these passages work. Go ahead.
All right. This is in quotes. It looks very stable because we're getting bananas, but the environmental and social costs that allow that to happen have been high, says Dan Beber, a researcher at the University of Exeter who works on a UK government-funded project aimed at securing the future of banana. All right, so now we're introduced to a researcher who works on making sure that bananas are available in the future, saying this could be an issue based on the environment and social costs, and so there's potentially something going on with the banana industry.
Right. So Dan Beber is definitely bringing up some kind of concern, right? There's some kind of concern here. Look, it has environmental and social costs, right? And that kind of refers back to the idea of balancing on a knife edge, right? So again, you don't need to know what a knife edge is, but you should be noticing, look, we're going into this direction of negativity, of concern, of problems. Okay, go ahead.
If one part of this tightly wound supply chain snaps, the whole export industry could come tumbling down. All right, so this part's not in quotes. I would almost expect it to be in quotes, but they're, I think, paraphrasing potentially or extrapolating what Dan Beber is saying, that there are a lot of moving parts, because they say if one part of this tightly wound supply chain snaps, so there are a lot of moving parts, and if something happens in one part of it, then we're in a world of hurt for bananas.
Right. Now, it's interesting to point out that you don't need to know what a knife edge is, right? It's in balancing on a knife edge, because that's literally what the last sentence of this paragraph is saying.
It's defining.
Right. It's defining it for you. So what happens for most students is they'll read that sentence, the one that's with the knife edge, and they'll read it over and over and over again, and hoping that something will click, and that causes them to panic that causes them to lose confidence, and that allows them to lose focus on the rest of this passage. So sure, you should notice that, look, there's something new coming on, but if you don't understand it completely, finish the paragraph. You never know. Maybe the next sentence or the next one after that will explain it in an easy way that you'll understand. I like to tell my students that this is a puzzle, right? This is all it is you trying to figure out the problem as if it's a puzzle. Just like a physician would, right? When a patient comes into their office, they don't know exactly what's wrong with them right then and there, but they're asking questions. They're fishing for information that can allow them to understand the bigger picture, right? So same thing, right? The key here is to not give up, right? But
I like that. I like that analogy of the puzzle. As you said it, the first thing that popped into my mind is watching my almost 5-year-old do a puzzle, and she picks up a piece and she's trying to figure out where it goes. And if she can't figure it out pretty quickly, she'll put it down and move on. Versus what you're saying is a lot of students will just continue to try to find where that piece goes, even if the piece doesn't even go anywhere yet because everything around it hasn't been built yet.
Exactly. Yeah. And, to go further with this analogy, a student will pick up that puzzle piece and they'll try to jam it into a place that doesn't need to go there. It doesn't need to exist in that area.
Yeah.
So,
and they'll say, it must just be cut wrong. It goes there. It's just cut wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, this isn't right. What is this? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So bottom line, just keep reading. Who knows? This paragraph may clear it up, right? So, and that's typically what's going to happen.
Yep. Put down that puzzle piece and move on to the next sentence.
Right.
I like it. All right. So this paragraph basically just telling us that the banana industry is ripe for collapse, potentially.
Yeah. I mean, if you can think about what's happened so far, we've read 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph has been about how there's a problem, some kind of pathogen that's affecting bananas. The second paragraph specifies the exact kind of banana, right? And talks about its history. Oh, there's this person it was named after, etc. It's such a great banana. Third paragraph is talking about that banana further, but now raising concerns about that banana. Oh, it's not the most stable banana, right? So we can only imagine where this is headed, right?
Yeah.
Where could this go, right? Maybe it's going to go back to how pathogens can affect this banana, right? Because it's not so stable, and if it's not stable and something goes wrong, there you go. There goes your bananas, right? So it's great. Okay, so I mean, we don't know exactly, but we can only assume so much and try to figure out the whole direction the author is going with this. And that's always great to do because anticipating something that you're about to read will make it a lot easier to read.
Yeah. Okay. Paragraph 4. Despite its ubiquity, the Cavendish is something of a genetic outlier among crops. Because it has 3 copies of each chromosome, it is sterile and can only reproduce by creating clones of itself. So at the end of this sentence, we get a little bit of information that I think would start to confuse me. I'm like, wait, 3 copies of each chromosome. I'm starting to think of, oh no, I need to know some biochemistry for this, or some physiology or something, some biology. And so I'd start to probably freak out at the beginning of this paragraph.
Yeah, most students would, right? Like, oh crap, now I need to know genetics, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to. I mean, just go with it, right? So it's an outlier. That's the key here. It's an outlier. There's a genetic outlier. You don't need to know why exactly. I mean, sure, something to do with chromosomes, but hey, you know enough, right? It's going with what we know, and that's enough.
Okay. This makes the Cavendish an ideal crop to grow at scale. Farmers know how a plantation of Cavendish bananas will respond to pesticides, how fast its fruit will ripen, how many bananas each plant will yield. So it just tells us, I guess, because of its genetic outlier status, that it's an ideal crop, and farmers like it because they know a lot about what will happen.
Sounds good.
In quotes, you know what's going to happen to a Cavendish banana when you pick it, says Weber. So again, just a quote giving us some expertise on what we just read. In quotes again, when you put it in a refrigerated container, you know exactly what's going to come out of the other end most of the time. So again, just more stability, saying, hey, this is a good dish, a good fruit. You know what's going to happen. Cavendish plants are short, so they don't blow over easily in a hurricane, are easy to spray with pesticides, and reliably produce lots of bananas. So this is, I think, just, it's kind of a weird paragraph because we go from, hey, the previous paragraph of the banana industry could collapse to, hey, bananas are an awesome plant to grow, fruit to grow because of how reliable they are.
Right, but maybe that reliability is a liability, right? So that reliability may be the problem, right? It's too consistent or stable, or not stable, that's the wrong word to use here, but it's so similar that that could be causing issues. I mean, we all know, how genetics works, right? There's always mutation, survival of the fittest. Maybe this one cannot survive, right? We don't know exactly, but we can only assume what will probably be discussed in the future. And we can anticipate the discussion. Why would the author bring up this characteristic of this banana? Maybe because it has some kind of problem, right? Maybe it doesn't react well to certain conditions like, pathogens, for all we know.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so fifth paragraph. By concentrating all their efforts on the Cavendish, banana exporters have built a system that allows a tropical fruit grown thousands of kilometers away to appear on supermarket shelves in the UK for less than £1 per kilo, undercutting fruits like apples, which are grown in dozens of varieties much closer to home. All right, so again, just reiterating why the banana industry is so reliant on the Cavendish, because they're a staple fruit and we know what's going to happen. We can ship them all over the world and pretty cheaply.
Great.
In quotes, people want cheap bananas, says Beber. So again, more expert talk from Beber. I like how they bring him in to just support what they're saying. Another quote here, the system is set up for a very uniform crop. So again, just talking about the banana industry and how that we need that uniform crop. To put it bluntly, uniformity equals higher profits per plant for banana producers. All right, so now we get a little bit more of why it's important to have that uniformity, because it makes the producers money. All right, in quotes again, they are addicted to Cavendish, says Plotz. Today, a 66-year-old professor at the University of Florida's Tropical Research and Education Center. All right, I like this paper, this article, because it mentions University of Florida, which is my alma mater. But they,
nice.
So we bring Plotz back in here, who is this researcher in Miami, who says that they, I think referring to banana producers, like the Cavendish because they make a lot of money for them.
Okay.
It is this genetic uniformity that lays the foundation for an $8 billion a year export industry. So again, just giving a number to what that higher profits means.
Great. Okay, so we read each paragraph so far, and we got the big picture of each one, but it doesn't seem like there's a big point that they're making other than what? What's the only point they've really made that's really emphasized? I mean, they mentioned pathogens pretty much only in the first paragraph.
Yeah.
Right? So what do you think what do you think this is the main, the big picture of this paragraph, or of this passage thus far, given everything we've read?
So it seems like the majority of it is saying the banana industry is obviously a big industry at $8 billion a year, and it is because the banana is a very uniform and reliable crop. That's it,
right? And if you kept reading this article, because it's pretty long, right? We only read like the first couple paragraphs, the first 5 paragraphs. It probably goes into how that could be an issue for the crop, right? How that kind of reliability that we're dependent on could actually be an issue if it's interacting with pathogens for whatever reason. So we don't know, but we can probably anticipate that. Now, with MCAT passages, they do cut off the passage, right? They don't give you very, very long passages. At most 8 paragraphs, 7 paragraphs. Now, I've heard of and seen of 17 paragraphs or 15 paragraphs, but usually those paragraphs are smaller. There aren't that many sentences. So that's to say that usually you have to stick to whatever they say, and you have to really focus on what they say, not what you anticipate them to say, right? Anticipating is great. It's allowing us to understand the next paragraph and what potentially be discussed in the future, but only focus on what is actually on the screen, not what you think this is going to discuss in the future. But think about what is potentially going to be discussed in the future to aid your comprehension as you keep reading. And that's why I really like this passage, because it set up something that we don't really talk about in the next couple paragraphs, and it just goes into more of the context on and probably setting up for the picture, the big idea of the entire article, which we don't know. We're not going to read, and we're not going to really focus on because we're only limited to 5 or 6 paragraphs on the actual test.
So I think as a student reading this passage, they would read that first paragraph or two and go, okay, we have this pathogen, we have this, and they would be consumed by that. And I think they would be thrown off that the rest of the passage doesn't talk about it. And I think it would concern them that, oh, wait, I don't know enough about this TR4 pathogen, and I know all of the questions are going to be about it. So how do you tell a student to deal with that kind of anxiety of, wait a minute, they're bringing up this pathogen, which I'm applying to medical school, I need to know about pathogens, and then they go away from it and don't talk about it again?
That's why we read the whole passage. So there's some students who only want to read the first paragraph or the last paragraph. There's students who want to read the questions first before they get to the passage, right? I think those are all mistakes. We have to read the entire passage to understand the author's point of view. So we can't assume that one paragraph is more important than the other until we read every paragraph. Yeah, the first paragraph makes it seem like we're going to be talking about pathogens, but to our dismay, we don't really discuss it, right, in the future. That's because we cut off the passage. Now, if we continue reading, they're probably going to talk about TR4 on and on about it. But at this point, we don't know, and we can't assume that. And the passage will probably not be about, or the questions will probably not be about TR4. And maybe they'll have one question on TR4 or the pathogen in from the first paragraph, but mostly probably not going to be discussing TR4. And what's going to happen for most students is because they read that first paragraph, like you said, they're going to depend on that, and they're going to answer a lot of their questions based on that. So they're going to pick anything that deals with TR4 or those pathogens because they're really dependent on the first paragraph. So how do you counteract that? How do you go against that problem that, hey, I probably should have known more about TR4? Well, if they really cared about it, they would have talked about it more. Yeah. Right. And so that tells you that you shouldn't worry too much about it. You should understand it and understand the flow of the passage, which is that's why we did this passage, because I want to show students that, look, maybe they'll talk about something and they'll expand on that thing later that we don't even get to, right? We don't even get to. So you're not required to really focus on TR4 for this passage. You're more responsible for the stability of the plant, right? And how it's susceptible to problems potentially, right? But we don't know what problems. They haven't really emphasized that yet. Only in the first paragraph they kind of mentioned some kind of issue. So I mean, that's where it goes. That's where the passage stops for us.
Okay. And then just one quick follow-up question about the types of questions that could come from this passage. Are the questions only going to come from what we read, or will they potentially say, okay, based on what the passage is saying, what could be the impact of this pathogen on the banana industry?
So that's reasoning beyond the text, or even reasoning within the text. Mm-hmm. And that happens. They'll actually ask questions about, like, oh, well, imagine that there are no problems with the plant, right? And there's TR4 that's being introduced. What will happen, right? Or they'll bring up brand new scenarios that you will probably have never read or know of. And what happens for most students when they read that is they start coming up with their own conclusions based on what they know about genetics, right? And not what the passage has said. So they'll do that to see if you can stick to the passage. If you stick to the passage, you'll stick to whatever they said, and you'll pick something reasonable based on what they said. If you don't stick to the passage, you'll probably get the wrong answer, and you'll probably pick an answer that is beyond what they talked about. And that's what gets a lot of students stumped, is they'll see 4 different answer choices, and they're all relatively random or never discussed in the passage. And the MCAT will ask them, well, which one is the best answer, right? And the key word here is best. Which one's the best given the passage? So that really bothers students. And usually what happens is they'll go back and read the passage, or they'll read a paragraph to understand it better. But at that point, they're lost, right? If you have to have read the whole passage to get that question right, right? And you have to know the big picture to get that question right. So if you're going back and hunting for things, you're wasting your time. You're probably not going to find the right answer that you want. So so they do ask those kinds of questions. The way you answer those questions are based on reading the entire passage, understanding what the author is trying to convey overall, given those 5 or 6 paragraphs that you have in front of you.
All right, there you have it. Another great article, some more great breaking down. This one was an interesting one that took some twists and turns and made the session a little bit fun today. Talking about bananas and those Cavendish bananas. I'm going to go order some of those Cavendish bananas next time I am out. Hope this one was helpful for you. Again, if you are interested in the Jack Weston CARS strategy course, medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Weston will activate that $100 off coupon. When you use that code, it is an affiliate link. I will get a small commission. You get to save money. I get a little bit of beer money, and that helps support me here at MedEd Media. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time here on the MCAT CARS podcast.